The first encounter. Captain Ethan Cross had seen many strange things in the galaxy, but nothing prepared him for this. The barren, red sky of the uncharted planet loomed overhead as he trudged through the jagged rocks and swirling dust storms. His mission was clear: find the rare energy crystals that Earth desperately needed to survive. Ethan's ship, the Starfire, had landed on the edge of a strange region that his scanners called unusually active. He didn't know what that meant, but he had no choice. Earth's energy reserves were nearly gone, and the survival of billions depended on this mission. As he adjusted the settings on his oxygen mask, his boots crunched over ground that glittered faintly with the promise of valuable resources. Ethan's scanner beeped loudly. The readings were strong. There was something here, something powerful. He moved carefully, his eyes scanning for any signs of danger. His pulse quickened when he saw a faint blue glow in the distance. It was coming from the mouth of a massive cave. The entrance was surrounded by tall, jagged pillars that looked almost like the ribs of a giant beast. Ethan hesitated. Every instinct told him to turn back, but desperation pushed him forward. Earth needed him. As he entered the cave, the air grew cooler and the glow grew brighter. The walls of the cave shimmered with strange, shifting patterns, as if they were alive. Ethan's hand tightened around the grip of his plasma rifle. He wasn't alone. Then he saw them. From the shadows, massive insect-like creatures emerged, their bodies shining like polished metal and their eyes glowing an eerie green. They were nearly twice his size, their sharp claws clicking against the stone floor as they surrounded him. Ethan froze. His mind raced as he calculated his options. Running wasn't an option. Fighting? No way. There were too many of them. Before he could act, the largest of the creatures stepped forward. She was taller than the rest, her body adorned with intricate, shimmering patterns that seemed to shift and change like liquid. Her crown-like crest made it clear this was their leader, the Alien Queen. The Queen tilted her head, studying Ethan with eyes that seemed to peer straight into his soul. When she spoke, her voice didn't come from her mouth. Instead, it echoed inside his mind, clear and sharp. "You dare touch me, human." Ethan flinched. The voice wasn't just loud, it was filled with power and anger, like a storm raging inside his head. He raised his hand slowly, showing he wasn't holding his weapon. I'm not here to fight," he said, his voice steady despite the fear twisting in his gut. "I'm here for resources. My people need help." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "Your people, always taking, always destroying. Why should I let you live?" Ethan's mind raced. He needed to say something, anything, to buy time. "We're not all like that," he said, his voice firm now. "I don't want to harm you or your people. I'm just trying to save mine." The Queen's mandibles twitched, and for a moment, she was silent. The other creatures hissed and clicked, their glowing eyes locked on Ethan. Then, the Queen raised one of her sharp claws. The cave grew silent. "You speak boldly for a human," she said. Her voice softened slightly but still carried an edge of danger. "If you mean what you say, prove it. I will spare you, for now. But you must earn your place here." Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "What do you want me to do?" The Queen's eyes gleamed with something that looked like curiosity, and maybe a hint of amusement. "You will face our trials. Fail, and you will die. Succeed, and I may listen to what you have to say." Ethan swallowed hard. Trials. He had no idea what that meant, but he wasn't in a position to argue. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady. The Queen leaned closer, her towering form casting a shadow over him. "Brave words, human, but bravery is not enough. We shall see if you survive." With a wave of her claw, the other creatures backed away, leaving Ethan standing alone in the eerie glow of the cave. The Queen turned and began to walk deeper into the darkness, her voice echoing in his mind one last time. "Follow me, if you dare." Ethan adjusted his grip on his rifle and took a deep breath. He didn't have a choice. Earth was counting on him, and he wasn't about to let his people down. As he stepped into the shadows behind the Queen, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far bigger than he could imagine. A fragile truce. Ethan followed the alien Queen deeper into the labyrinth of glowing tunnels. The walls shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, casting strange, shifting lights that made the shadows seem alive. The air grew cooler, and a low hum vibrated through the cavern, as if the planet itself was breathing. Every step felt heavier, not just from the atmosphere, but from the weight of what lay ahead. The Queen moved with fluid grace, her towering form gliding effortlessly over the uneven ground. Behind her, the insectoid guards watched Ethan closely, their clawed feet clicking against the stone. Ethan knew one wrong move could mean instant death. After what felt like an eternity, they entered a massive chamber. The ceiling soared high above, glittering with thousands of tiny glowing crystals. In the center of the room was an intricate platform, carved with alien symbols that pulsed faintly with energy. Surrounding it were strange, organic structures that looked like pods, some open, revealing sharp, glistening spines, others sealed shut and pulsing with an eerie rhythm. The Queen turned to face Ethan, her eyes glowing brighter as her voice echoed in his mind. "You stand at the threshold of the trials. Prove yourself, human or perish." Ethan clenched his fists, forcing himself to stand tall despite the overwhelming tension. "I'm ready. What do I need to do?" The Queen's mandibles twitched in what might have been a smile or a sneer. "There are 3 trials. Each one will test your body, your mind, and your soul. Fail even one, and your life ends here." She gestured to the first pod, which opened with a wet, slithering sound. Inside was a maze of shifting, translucent panels that seemed to ripple like water. At the center, a glowing orb floated, spinning slowly and casting beams of light across the chamber. "This is the trial of the labyrinth," the Queen said. "Retrieve the orb and return it to me. But beware, the maze will shift, and it will test your ability to adapt. Touch the wrong panel, and you will suffer." Ethan approached the pod cautiously. The entrance shimmered, and as he stepped inside, the world around him seemed to twist. The walls of the maze were like liquid mirrors, reflecting his image in distorted, shifting patterns. He reached out to touch one, but as soon as his hand neared the surface, it rippled violently, sending a shockwave that made him stumble back. "Focus," he muttered to himself, taking a deep breath. He scanned the maze, looking for patterns in the shifting walls. Slowly, carefully, he began to navigate the labyrinth, his heart pounding with every step. The walls moved unpredictably, forcing him to think on his feet. At one point, a panel ahead of him shimmered and split into 3 different paths, each leading in a different direction. Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. One path glowed faintly blue, another pulsed red, and the third was dark and ominous. "Instinct," he whispered. "Go with instinct." He chose the blue path, stepping forward just as the other 2 collapsed into jagged, deadly spikes. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple, but he didn't stop. The orb was closer now, its light growing brighter. Finally, after what felt like hours, Ethan reached the center. The orb floated before him, its glow warm and inviting. He reached out, carefully wrapping his fingers around it. The moment he touched it, the maze began to tremble. The walls rippled violently, collapsing and reforming as the entire structure began to close in on him. "Move, Ethan," he shouted to himself, sprinting back the way he had come. The path behind him dissolved into nothingness as he ran, the orb clutched tightly in his hands. Just as the last section of the maze crumbled, he leaped forward, landing hard on the stone floor of the chamber. The guards hissed, their claws twitching, but the Queen raised a hand to silence them. She approached Ethan slowly, her glowing eyes fixed on the orb in his hands. "Impressive," she said, her voice carrying a hint of surprise. "You have passed the first trial." Ethan stood, breathing heavily but refusing to show weakness. "What's next?" The queen gestured to the second pod, which opened to reveal a swirling mass of light and shadow. "The trial of the mind," she said. "Enter and face the truth of your past. Only those with unshakable resolve can survive." Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't know what the trial would entail, but he could feel the weight of the queen's gaze, as if she was already judging him. He glanced at the swirling mass, then back at the queen. "I'll face it. Let's get this over with." The queen's mandibles twitched again. "Very well, human. Step forward, and let the trial begin." As Ethan approached the second pod, a chill ran down his spine. He had faced many dangers in his life, but something about this trial felt different. It wasn't just his body at risk. It was his very mind and soul. The hive's tests. Ethan stood at the entrance of the second trial, the swirling vortex of light and shadow casting strange patterns on his face. The queen loomed behind him, her alien voice echoing in his mind. "This is the trial of the mind, human. Within, your greatest fears, regrets, and truths will be laid bare. If you falter, you will never return." Ethan swallowed hard, gripping his plasma rifle tightly, though he doubted it would help. "Let's do this," he said, stepping forward into the vortex. The moment he entered, the world shifted. The cavern vanished, replaced by a landscape that was hauntingly familiar. He was back on Earth, standing in the ruins of a city. Skyscrapers lay in crumbled heaps, and the air was thick with smoke and ash. Ethan's heart clenched. This was his hometown. What was left of it after the energy crisis had plunged Earth into chaos? "Why are you showing me this?" he shouted, spinning around. His voice echoed, but there was no answer. Suddenly, he heard a child's cry. He turned to see a small boy huddled under a broken beam, his face streaked with dirt and tears. Ethan's chest tightened. It was him as a child, during the darkest days of the collapse. "You left us," the boy said, his voice trembling with pain. "You ran away to save yourself." Ethan staggered back, shaking his head. "That's not true. I didn't have a choice. I had to join the Space Corps to find a solution for Earth." "Lies!" The boy screamed, his voice distorting into something monstrous. His small form began to twist and grow, transforming into a shadowy figure with glowing green eyes. It lunged at Ethan, claws outstretched. Ethan rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. He raised his rifle instinctively, but the shadow creature disappeared before he could fire. The air grew colder, and Ethan felt a presence behind him. He spun around to see the figure of his old commanding officer, Colonel Hargrave, standing tall and imposing. "Do you really think you can save anyone, Cross?" Hargrave sneered. "You've failed every mission that mattered. Your team, your family, everyone who ever trusted you." Ethan's grip tightened on his rifle. "I won't let you manipulate me," he said through gritted teeth. "This isn't real." Hargrave's form dissolved into smoke, but the voice lingered. "Isn't it? How much blood is on your hands, Captain?" The smoke formed into dozens of shadowy figures, all screaming accusations at Ethan. Their voices grew louder and louder, until he felt like his head would explode. He fell to his knees, clutching his ears. "Enough." He roared, forcing himself to stand. "I know who I am. I know what I've done. I'm not perfect, but I'm here to make things right." The shadows hesitated, their forms wavering. Ethan took a step forward, his voice steady now. "I won't let my past define me. The mistakes I've made, they'd push me to be better. You can't break me." The shadows let out a collective shriek before dissolving into nothingness. The ruined city faded away, replaced by the glowing chamber of the hive. Ethan stumbled out of the vortex, gasping for air. The queen stood before him, her glowing eyes studying him with a new intensity. "You have faced the truth of your mind and survived," she said. "Few manage such a feat." Ethan straightened, still catching his breath. "What's next?" he asked, his voice tinged with both exhaustion and determination. The queen gestured to a third pod, this one larger and more imposing than the others. It pulsed with a deep red light, and the air around it seemed to hum with energy. "The trial of the soul," she said, "the most difficult trial of all. You will face not just your fears, but your very essence. Only those with an unbreakable will can endure." Ethan nodded, his resolve unwavering. "Bring it on." The queen tilted her head, as if appraising him anew. "You are unlike the humans I have encountered before," she said. "Perhaps you are worthy of what lies ahead. Step forward, human, and prove it." Ethan approached the final pod, his heart pounding. He had no idea what awaited him, but one thing was certain: he wouldn't give up. Not now. Not ever. A hidden threat. Ethan sat on the cold, uneven floor of the hive's central chamber, his body aching from the trials he had just endured. He had faced the labyrinth's ever-shifting walls, confronted the darkest corners of his mind, and emerged intact. But he knew this was far from over. The alien queen watched him from her throne-like perch, her glowing eyes betraying no emotion. "You have proven yourself resilient, human," she said telepathically. "But resilience alone does not guarantee survival. The hive faces challenges far greater than your petty quest for resources." Ethan raised his head, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Before the queen could answer, a sudden commotion echoed from the far end of the chamber. A group of insectoid guards rushed in, their mandibles clicking in agitation. One of them spoke in a series of high-pitched chirps and growls, the urgency clear even if Ethan couldn't understand the words. The queen's eyes narrowed as she processed the message. She turned back to Ethan, her voice colder now. "You are not the only intruder in my domain." Ethan stood, gripping his plasma rifle instinctively. "Intruder? Who else is here?" The queen didn't answer immediately. Instead, she rose from her perch, her towering form casting an imposing shadow. "Come with me," she commanded. "If you wish to understand the stakes, you will see them with your own eyes." The hive's secrets. Ethan followed the queen through a series of twisting tunnels, flanked by her guards. The air grew heavier, filled with a strange, metallic tang that made his skin prickle. As they descended deeper into the hive, the walls began to change. They were no longer smooth and glowing, but jagged and dark, pulsating with an ominous red light. "Where are we going?" Ethan asked, his voice echoing faintly. "To the heart of the hive," the queen replied. "You will see what threatens us, what threatens everything." They entered a massive cavern, and Ethan's breath caught in his throat. At the center of the chamber stood a towering structure, unlike anything he had seen before. It resembled a cocoon, but it was made of an unnatural black material that seemed to absorb all light. Strange symbols glowed faintly on its surface, shifting and twisting as if alive. "What is that?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The queen's mandibles twitched. "It is an artifact left behind by an ancient enemy, a race that sought to enslave my kind long before your species took its first steps on Earth." Ethan approached cautiously, feeling an almost magnetic pull from the structure. "Why is it here? What does it do?" The queen's voice grew heavy with bitterness. "It was dormant for centuries, buried deep beneath our world. But your arrival, your drilling and disruptions, has awakened it. Now, it sends out a signal, summoning something far worse." Ethan turned to her, his eyes wide. "Summoning what?" She didn't answer. Instead, she raised one of her clawed arms, and the air around the artifact shimmered. A projection appeared, showing a fleet of massive alien ships, hulking, predatory vessels that dwarfed even Earth's largest battleships. The ships glided through the void, their black hulls bristling with weapons. "This is the Scourge," the queen said, "a race that devours entire civilizations. They will come, drawn by the artifact's signal. And when they arrive, there will be no negotiation, only death, the hidden threat within." Ethan's stomach turned as he processed the gravity of the situation. "So why not destroy the artifact?" he asked. The Queen's gaze hardened. We have tried. Its material is impervious to all our weapons, and now it has begun to infect the hive. She gestured to the far side of the cavern, where several of her own kind lay motionless, their bodies twisted and blackened. Strange tendrils of dark energy crawled over them, pulsating like veins. Ethan approached one of the fallen creatures, his gut twisting at the sight. They're infected. Yes, the Queen said. The artifact corrupts all it touches, turning them into mindless drones. If we cannot stop it, the entire hive will fall, and when the Scourge arrive, they will claim both our worlds. Ethan stared at the artifact, his mind racing. Why are you telling me this? What can I do? The Queen stepped closer, her towering form looming over him. You have proven yourself capable, human. But more importantly, you are different. The artifact responds to you. It reacts to your presence in ways we do not understand. You may be the key to stopping it. Ethan's mouth went dry. Me? I don't even know how it works. I'm just a soldier. Perhaps, the Queen said, her voice tinged with a hint of uncertainty. But you are our only chance. A growing danger. As Ethan tried to process this revelation, one of the guards hissed urgently, pointing to the cocoon-like artifact. Its surface had begun to crack, and a low, ominous hum filled the cavern. It's accelerating, the Queen said, her voice sharp. We are running out of time. Ethan tightened his grip on his rifle, his mind racing. Then we need a plan. Fast. The Queen tilted her head, studying him intently. If you are to help us, human, you must first survive. The hive is not united in this fight. There are those among my kind who see your presence as the true threat. Ethan frowned. You're saying there's a rebellion. The Queen nodded. They will come for you, and for me. We must deal with them swiftly, or none of us will survive long enough to face the Scourge. The stage was set. Ethan had come to this planet searching for resources, but now he found himself entangled in a conflict far larger than he could have imagined. As he prepared to face the dangers within the hive and the growing threat from beyond, one thought burned in his mind. Failure was not an option. The Queen's secret. The cavern was eerily silent after the guards left to investigate the rebellion brewing in the hive. Ethan stood near the artifact, its ominous hum now a constant presence in the background. The Queen remained still, her towering form illuminated by the dim, pulsing light of the artifact. Ethan broke the silence. You're holding something back, he said, turning to face her. There's more to this, isn't there? The Queen's glowing eyes locked onto him. For a moment, she said nothing, her alien features unreadable. Then she stepped closer, her voice resonating in his mind. You are perceptive, human. Yes, there is more. A truth my kind has guarded for millennia. Ethan crossed his arms, bracing himself. I'm listening. The Queen gestured toward the artifact, her claws tracing patterns in the air as she spoke. This planet was not always ours. Long ago, it belonged to the race that created this artifact. They were powerful, far beyond your comprehension, but their ambition was their undoing. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You're saying they destroyed themselves. The Queen nodded slowly. Their experiments with energy and control grew out of balance. The artifact was their greatest weapon, a beacon capable of summoning forces across the galaxy. But it also corrupted them, turning their own people into mindless slaves. When the Scourge came, they were too fractured to resist. Ethan glanced at the artifact, a chill running down his spine. And you took this planet after they were gone. Yes, the Queen said. We claimed it, hoping to rebuild. For centuries, we thrived. The artifact lay dormant, and we believed its power was contained. But now, she trailed off, her gaze darkening. Ethan connected the dots. It's waking up because of us, because of Earth's drilling operations. The Queen didn't deny it. Your kind has disrupted the balance. The artifact feeds on activity, on energy. The more you disturb the planet, the stronger it becomes. Ethan clenched his fists. We didn't know. Earth is dying. We're desperate. But if this thing brings the scourge here, then it's not just your hive at risk. It's all of us. The Queen stepped closer, her voice lowering. That is why I spared you, human. You are not like the others. You seek solutions, not destruction. And you have proven your strength in the trials. Perhaps you are capable of achieving what we could not. A risky revelation. The Queen gestured for Ethan to follow her. They moved to a secluded chamber deeper within the hive, where the air was thick with the scent of decay. At the center of the room stood a pool of liquid, shimmering with a strange iridescent light. What is this? Ethan asked, peering into the pool. This is the hive's core, the Queen explained. It is the source of our life and our connection. Through it, I can see the memories of my kind, and sometimes the echoes of the past. She dipped one of her claws into the pool, and the liquid rippled. Images began to form above the surface, like holograms suspended in the air. Ethan saw flashes of a vast alien civilization, their cities towering into the skies, their technology incomprehensible. Then, the images darkened, showing their downfall. The corruption of the artifact, the chaos, the scourge descending like a swarm of locusts. Ethan watched, transfixed. This is what's coming for us. Yes, the Queen said, but there is something else. She manipulated the pool, and the images shifted. This time, Ethan saw Earth. His planet, covered in sprawling cities and scarred landscapes, flashed before him. He saw massive energy drills burrowing into the ground, tearing apart the land in search of resources. The Queen's voice softened. Your people are more like the creators of the artifact than you realize. Their ambition, their hunger for power, it mirrors the mistakes of the past. Ethan felt a surge of anger but forced himself to stay calm. We're not like them. We're just trying to survive. And survival can lead to destruction, the Queen replied. You must help us stop the artifact before your people awaken its full power. A dangerous proposal. Ethan stepped back from the pool, his mind reeling. You want me to stop it? How? You said your weapons can't destroy it. They cannot, the Queen admitted, but your presence affects it. I believe you can sever its connection to the hive. Ethan frowned. Why me? What makes me so special? The Queen hesitated, an uncharacteristic pause that made Ethan uneasy. The artifact reacts to the life forms that disturb its balance. Your kind's energy signature is unique. It resonates with the artifact in a way we cannot replicate. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, feeling the weight of her words. So, you're saying I have to get close to it? Disable it somehow? Yes, the Queen said. But doing so will be dangerous. The artifact's corruption has spread, and it will fight to protect itself. You may not survive. Ethan met her gaze, his jaw tightening. If it means saving Earth and your hive, I'll do it. The threat within. Before they could act, a loud explosion rocked the hive. The walls trembled, and the glow of the hive's core flickered. One of the guards rushed in, chittering urgently. The Queen's eyes darkened. The rebels have struck. They seek to destroy the core and seize control. Ethan grabbed his rifle. If we don't stop them, we're all dead. The Queen nodded. Then we fight together. As they prepared to face the rebellion, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that their battle was only the beginning. The artifact loomed in his mind, its dark hum a constant reminder of the danger ahead. Failure was not an option. Not for Earth, not for the hive, and not for him. The Queen's secret. The chamber was silent except for the faint hum of the artifact in the distance. Ethan stood near the edge of the hive's core, its shimmering pool of liquid light casting ripples across the room. The Queen towered over him, her glowing eyes locked onto his. Despite her alien appearance, there was something deeply unsettling about her gaze. It was as if she was studying not just his face, but his soul. "You have faced the trials, human," she said telepathically. "And you have survived. That is no small feat. But survival is only the beginning. Now, you must understand the truth." Ethan straightened, gripping his plasma rifle tightly. "The truth about what?" "The artifact. The scourge? Your hive." The Queen's mandibles twitched, a subtle gesture of irritation or perhaps hesitation. "About all of it. And your role in what is to come." She turned toward the pool, dipping a claw into its surface. The liquid shimmered and pulsed, forming images that hovered above it like ghostly holograms. Ethan leaned closer, his breath catching as the scenes unfolded before him. The fall of the creators. The first image showed a thriving alien civilization, their towering cities gleaming with a brilliance that outshone even Earth's greatest achievements. Ethan could see their advancements, floating transport systems, energy fields that shimmered like auroras, and structures that seemed to defy gravity. This was the world of the creators, the Queen said. They were masters of energy manipulation, able to harness power from the very fabric of the universe. The artifact was their greatest creation, a device meant to unite their kind under a single consciousness, to eliminate war and division. Ethan watched as the images shifted. The once thriving cities began to darken, their glowing energy fields turning crimson. Shadows spread across the planet, consuming everything in their path. The people, once proud and powerful, fell to their knees, their eyes glowing with the same red light as the artifact. But their ambition was their downfall, the Queen continued. The artifact did not unite them. It corrupted them, turning them into vessels of its will. The scourge did not create the destruction you see. They were summoned by the artifact, drawn to its power like moths to a flame. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying the artifact. It's alive." "In a sense," the Queen replied. "It is a conduit, a beacon, and a weapon all at once. It does not think as you or I do, but it seeks to spread its influence. And now your kind has awakened it. Earth's role in the awakening." The images shifted again, this time showing Earth. Massive energy drills burrowed deep into the ground, their vibrations resonating across the planet. Ethan recognized the scenes immediately. These were Earth's desperate efforts to extract the last remnants of power to sustain their dying world. "You came here seeking salvation," the Queen said. "But your actions have disrupted the delicate balance of this planet. The artifact was dormant for centuries, buried beneath layers of protective energy fields. Your drilling has weakened those fields, allowing its influence to spread once more." Ethan clenched his fists. "We didn't know. We were just trying to survive." "Survival often blinds creatures to the consequences of their actions," the Queen said. "But now, the consequences are clear. The artifact has begun to corrupt not just my hive, but the very fabric of this world. If left unchecked, it will summon the scourge once more." The hive's dilemma. The next series of images showed the hive itself. Alien workers moved in coordinated patterns, their bioluminescent bodies glowing faintly as they carried out their tasks. But then the corruption began. Dark tendrils of energy snaked through the hive, infecting the workers one by one. Their bodies twisted and blackened, their glowing eyes turning a malevolent red. "This is what we face," the Queen said. "The artifact's corruption spreads like a disease. It twists my people, turning them into mindless drones under its control. We have tried to contain it, but it grows stronger with every passing moment." Ethan felt a pang of guilt. His mission, meant to save Earth, had brought this devastation upon an entire species. "Why didn't you destroy it when you had the chance?" The Queen's gaze hardened. "We tried. But the artifact is impervious to our weapons. And now, its power has grown beyond our reach. That is why you are here, human." Ethan frowned. "Me? What can I do that you can't?" The Queen's proposal. The Queen stepped closer, her towering form casting a shadow over Ethan. "You are different. Your presence affects the artifact in ways we do not understand. When you touched the hive's core during your trials, its energy resonated with you. It may be that your kind's unique energy signature can sever the artifact's connection to this world. Ethan's mind raced. So, you want me to destroy it? The Queen hesitated. Destroying it may not be possible, but disabling it, cutting off its signal, might be. However, doing so will not be without risk. The artifact is not defenseless, and its corruption will fight to protect itself. Ethan took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. If it means stopping the scourge and saving Earth, I'll do it. The Queen tilted her head, her glowing eyes studying him. Bravery alone will not be enough, human. There are those within my hive who see your presence as a threat. They will try to stop you. And me. The hidden rebellion. Before Ethan could respond, a distant explosion rocked the hive. The walls trembled, and a low, ominous roar echoed through the tunnels. One of the guards rushed in, its mandibles clicking urgently as it communicated with the Queen. Her expression darkened. The rebels have struck. They seek to destroy the hive's core and seize control. Ethan gripped his rifle, adrenaline surging through his veins. If they destroy the core, what happens? The hive will fall into chaos, the Queen said, and the artifact's corruption will spread unchecked. We must stop them. Ethan nodded, his determination unwavering. Then let's go. As they prepared to face the rebellion, Ethan knew that this fight was only the beginning. The artifact loomed in the back of his mind, its hum a constant reminder of the greater threat ahead. Failure was not an option, not for the hive, not for Earth, and not for him. A reluctant bond. The rebellion had come sooner than expected. Explosions echoed through the tunnels, and the air vibrated with the sound of distant clashes. Ethan followed the Queen as she led him through the winding corridors of the hive, her sharp eyes scanning every movement in the shadows. She had not yet fully revealed the depth of the internal division within her people, but Ethan could feel it now, in the tense air that pressed around them. We must act quickly, the Queen said, her voice sharp and commanding. If the rebels reach the hive's core, they will trigger its full activation. The scourge will come, and we will not survive. Ethan nodded. Where are they coming from? The Queen didn't answer immediately. Instead, she motioned for him to follow. The path ahead narrowed, leading them deeper into the heart of the hive. As they walked, the Queen's posture remained regal, but there was an underlying tension in her movements, a hint of uncertainty. They arrived at a large chamber. In the center, a group of rebels stood, their forms cloaked in the shadows of the flickering lights. The air between them and the Queen crackled with hostility. Ethan could see the hostility written in their eyes, their postures tense and defensive. A tall figure at the front of the group stepped forward, one of the Queen's most trusted commanders, Zoran. His insectoid form was heavily adorned with battle armor, and his face was hardened by years of conflict. His voice was low, but it rang with authority. You've come to stop us, my Queen. Zoran's words dripped with venom. You've grown weak. You've allowed the human to poison your mind. We should have destroyed the artifact long ago. It is our only salvation. The Queen's eyes flared with a dangerous light. You know nothing of salvation, Zoran. The artifact is a curse, not a gift. It must be contained. The artifact is our legacy, Zoran retorted, his mandibles clicking in frustration. It is our duty to embrace its power, not hide from it. You've lost your vision. You've become afraid. Ethan stepped forward, his hand on the grip of his rifle. He didn't know what was going on between them, but he could feel the deep divide between the Queen and her people. This was more than just a rebellion. It was a fight for the very soul of the hive. You're wrong, Zoran, Ethan said, his voice steady. The artifact isn't a gift. It's a weapon. It's already corrupted too many of your people. If we don't stop it, it will destroy you all. Zoran sneered at Ethan. And what makes you think you can stop it, human? You know nothing of our ways. You think your strength and technology will save us. You're nothing but an intruder. The queen's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Enough. Zoran flinched as if struck. The queen's words were powerful, and there was no room for argument in her tone. She turned her eyes to Ethan, then back to the rebels. We do not have the luxury of fighting among ourselves. The scourge are coming. If you wish to protect the hive, you will put aside your differences and help us. There is no other option. For a long moment, the rebels were silent. Then Zoran stepped back, his expression unreadable. You have lost your way, my queen. But perhaps you are right. There is no time for more conflict. The tension in the room didn't disappear, but it lessened. Zoran motioned for his followers to stand down. For the hive, then, he said begrudgingly. But mark my words, this will not be forgotten. The queen nodded, her expression resolute. I will not forget it. As the rebels dispersed, Ethan could feel the weight of the moment. The battle for the hive was far from over, but this uneasy truce, this fragile alliance, was their only hope for survival. A bond formed in fire. The queen turned to Ethan, her glowing eyes softening for a brief moment. You've proven yourself human, more than I thought possible. Perhaps there is more to your kind than I first believed. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And what does that mean? It means, the queen said, her voice low, that I now see you not just as an ally, but as something more, something vital to our survival. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. What was she implying? He had been working with the hive out of necessity, but now there was something deeper forming between them, something unspoken. You're talking about the artifact, Ethan said, though it felt more like a statement than a question. You want me to help stop it. But how? I've only been able to survive because of my connection to it. I'm not sure how much longer I can hold out. The queen's gaze softened, and for the first time, Ethan saw a glimpse of something human in her. Fear. Fear for her people, for the planet, and for herself. You must go to the artifact. You must sever its connection to the hive. You have the power to do this, human. I can feel it. Ethan hesitated. The queen was asking him to walk directly into the heart of the danger, to face the artifact head-on. If he failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. He'd seen the evidence in the corrupted bodies of the hive workers, the darkened eyes of those already lost to the artifact's influence. He thought of Earth, of his people, desperate for survival. If he didn't do this, both the hive and his home would fall. I'll do it, Ethan said, his voice steady. I'll stop it. The queen's eyes flickered with something like gratitude. I knew you would. But know this, when you face the artifact, you will face more than just its power. You will face the collective will of those who have been corrupted by it. You may not survive, but the hive, and your people, will. Ethan nodded. I won't fail. As they made their way toward the artifact, a bond began to form between them, an understanding that transcended species and origin. They were bound now, not just by survival, but by the shared burden of a mission far greater than either of them could have anticipated. The final confrontation was coming, and Ethan knew that whether or not they survived would depend on how far they were willing to go, and what they were willing to sacrifice. A new beginning. The deeper Ethan and the queen ventured into the heart of the hive, the more he could feel the weight of their mission pressing down on him. The tunnels were darker now, the air thick with the smell of burning energy and the crackle of unseen power. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was no longer just about saving Earth or the hive. It had become something larger, something that might change the fate of both their worlds. The queen walked beside him, her imposing presence a reminder of the responsibility that lay ahead. Her once confident demeanor was now tinged with something else, uncertainty. Even she, the ruler of the hive, was unsure of what the outcome would be. But they had no choice. The artifact had to be destroyed, or it would consume everything. They reached the chamber where the artifact lay, its massive form casting a shadow over the room. It was as if the very walls of the hive were bowing to it, vibrating with its dark energy. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, not just with fear, but with anticipation. This was the moment that would determine everything. The Queen turned to him, her voice softer than he had ever heard it before. "Are you ready?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He looked at the artifact, its surface pulsating with power. He could feel it reaching out, sensing his presence. It was as if it knew he had come to stop it, and it wasn't going to let him do so easily. "I'm ready," Ethan said at last, his voice steady. "But I won't do this alone." The Queen nodded. "You will not be alone. You carry the hopes of more than just your people. You carry the future of my species as well." Ethan turned toward her, his gaze meeting hers. In that moment, he understood. The Queen wasn't just a ruler. She was a protector, someone who had seen the destruction of her own people and was willing to fight for their survival. And in a way, he had become part of that fight too. The connection between them, human and alien, was no longer a matter of necessity. It had evolved into something deeper, something that united them in their shared mission. The final confrontation. As Ethan approached the artifact, the ground beneath his feet trembled. The hum of the artifact grew louder, almost deafening. The air seemed to grow thick with a tangible, oppressive force. He could feel his body react to it, his muscles tightening, his breath shallow. It was as if the artifact was trying to pull him in, to make him one with its will. He reached out slowly, his fingers just inches from the smooth surface. The moment his hand touched it, a searing heat shot through his arm, and his vision blurred. His entire body screamed in protest, as if the artifact was trying to consume him. He gritted his teeth, pushing through the pain. The Queen's voice echoed in his mind, steady and calm. "Do not let it control you. You must sever the connection. Focus on your will, your humanity." Ethan closed his eyes, focusing on his breath, on his thoughts. He thought of Earth, the faces of his family, his people. He thought of the destruction they faced, of the sacrifices they had made. He thought of the Queen, her people, and the hope they had placed in him. With a sudden burst of will, he wrenched his hand free from the artifact's pull. The pain didn't stop, but it lessened. He focused harder, drawing on everything he had learned, everything he had fought for. The artifact's hum shifted, changing from a threatening roar to a dissonant, almost pleading sound. Ethan could feel it, as if the artifact was alive, aware of his resistance. He reached again, this time with a purpose. As his fingers made contact with the artifact, the air around him crackled with energy. A shockwave shot through his body. But this time, he didn't flinch. He concentrated, pushing with all his strength. Then, with a final, almost violent surge, the artifact erupted in a burst of blinding light. Aftermath and sacrifice. When the light faded, Ethan blinked, disoriented. The ground beneath him had shifted, and the room was eerily silent. The artifact, once a massive source of malevolent energy, was now nothing more than a pile of glowing fragments, their light dimming as the last of their power faded. Ethan staggered back, breathing heavily. He felt drained, as if every ounce of energy had been siphoned from him. The Queen stepped forward, her eyes wide with astonishment, and something deeper, relief. "You did it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You saved us all." Ethan looked at her, his vision swimming. "I couldn't have done it without you. Without your people. Without everything we've been through." The Queen nodded. "There is a bond between us now, human. A bond forged through sacrifice, through the strength of our will. Perhaps it is not just your kind that can teach us the value of survival." Ethan managed a weak smile. Maybe we're not so different after all. As they stood there, amidst the remnants of the artifact's destruction, Ethan realized that what they had accomplished was far more than just a victory over a dangerous weapon. They had forged a bond between two species, human and alien, something that would change the future of both their worlds. The artifact was destroyed, but in its place, a new understanding had emerged, one built on trust, shared sacrifice, and the will to protect everything they held dear. But even as they celebrated their victory, Ethan knew this was not the end. The Scourge were still out there, waiting for the signal to arrive. The threat had been delayed, but not erased. And now, more than ever, the alliance between Earth and the Hive was their only hope of surviving the coming storm. As the Queen turned to leave, Ethan followed her, his resolve hardening. Together, they would face whatever came next, whatever challenges lay ahead. But for now, they had won a hard-fought battle. And that victory, however brief, was a new beginning.